Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description. Evening. October 10th, streets of Konoha. It was a cool evening, the streets were half empty, and the birds and other creatures were already asleep. An unforgettable event was destined to take place that evening. An event that would bring happiness to two loved ones, and the rest of the villagers would never know. It was on this very evening that a sad-looking blonde man walked the streets. He was about 175 centimeters tall, with a crew cut, and was dressed in black combat trousers, a matching turtleneck, a dark green Jonin vest lined with 3mm thick armor plates, and black combat boots, as he disliked wearing sandals. These boots were the summer type, ideal for wearing in this country due to the moderate climate. On his forehead was a black forehead protector bearing the village's emblem. This man's name was Namake's Naruto, and he resembled his older brother in appearance, save for a vertical scar on his right cheek. Girls followed him as a child, and of course they still do, but not as openly and obviously as before. He's been wandering around the city for a couple of hours now, looking sad, wondering who he can beg for a cigarette from, since he's already run out of his own. While walking, he bumped into Asuma Sarutobi and Kurinai Yehi, hugging near a maple tree. Naruto decided to wait, as Asuma always had a pack of cigarettes in his pocket. As soon as the couple parted, the blonde, as calm and quiet as a surface of water, approached Sarutobi and clapped him on the shoulder. The shinobi jumped in surprise. Turning around, he looked at the annoying man, recognizing him as his senpai, and breathed a sigh of relief. "Naruto-senpai, don't scare me like that." It was clear that Asuma still hadn't recovered from what had happened. "Got a cigarette?" the blonde asked. The brunette stuck his hands in his pockets and began rummaging around, searching for the ill-fated pack. Finally, finding it in his right pocket, he pulled it out and handed it to the blonde along with a lighter. The blonde pulled out a cigarette, brought it to his lips, and lit it with the lighter. After taking his first drag, Naruto exhaled noisily, once again deep in thought. But the brunette distracted him. "Naruto-senpai, did something happen?" Asuma asked. "No, nothing happened." "What makes you think that?" the blonde man asked in response. "You just smoke when something's really bothering you," the brunette replied. "So, what happened?" "Don't worry about it, Asuma," Naruto began. "The less you know, the better you sleep, right? Thanks for the cigarette." The blonde turned and headed home. Asuma had been right. Naruto was worried about tonight. Something would happen today, and it would be terrible. When I reached my apartment in the dormitory, an explosion occurred from the direction of the mountains. Namake's forgot about the keys and kicked the door down, taking spare equipment from a hidden safe in the hallway. Performing a series of hand seals and extending his right hand in front of him, a vortex appeared before him. He entered and emerged in his brother's training ground. Entering the small house on the grounds, Naruto saw his older brother, his face downcast, sitting next to the bed where his newborn son was snoring. "Minato!" the blonde called out to him. He turned at the sound of the voice and, seeing his brother, was taken aback. "Naruto, what should I do?" Minato asked, almost sobbing. "Where's Kushina-san?" Naruto answered. "A masked man took her," Minato said, looking hysterical. "He wants to rescue the Nine Tails. Tell me what to do, Naruto." Naruto couldn't stand the sight of his brother's collapse and punched him in the face. "Get it together and save your wife, you worm." This was the last straw for Naruto. "How much do you think about it? For 5 whole years you've been getting into trouble and I have had to save your ass. Enough. Are you a man or a wet chicken?" With these words, the blonde walked up to his brother, lifted him from his chair and kicked him in the ass with such force that Minato broke through the wall. "Save your betrothed, and I'll babysit my niece." A few minutes later. "Naruto, come here," Kushina called the blonde to her. "Naruto, if something happens to us, will you look after Menma?" "Yes, Kushina-san, I'll keep an eye on it." "But…" Naruto was about to ask a question, but the woman interrupted him. "Instead of sitting here and talking, go and help your brother." "Yes, sir." Naruto saluted and headed for the exit. The battle between the fourth and the masked man was in full swing, but the Hokage was beginning to lose ground due to fatigue and the pressure of the enemy's attacks. Noticing that things were going badly, Minato was about to deliver the finishing blow, but the enemy was blown away. Or rather, he was blown away, not by the wind, but by the air current emanating from Naruto. "You came just in time, Naruto, otherwise I was starting to get tired." The fourth smiled, falling to his knee and breathing heavily. "Rest, he's my concern now," the blonde said, sensing familiar chakra emanating from the stranger. Naruto abruptly approached his enemy and struck his mask. As soon as it shattered under the blow, the blonde recognized the man as his brother's student, Uchiha Obito. "You! How? You died!" The blonde man still couldn't believe what was happening, trying to shake this obsession from his mind. "No, Naruto-senpai, I didn't die. I fell into a coma. But 2 years later, I woke up to take revenge on Konoha." "What do you need revenge for? After all, the village didn't do anything to you?" "I have many reasons, but the very first one is to avenge Rin's death at the hands of Kakashi." "Kakashi isn't to blame. Rin asked for this herself. She was manipulated by our enemies." "But why kill? There could have been other ways to get rid of the manipulation. This was the only way, others didn't work." "But I saw everything. I saw that you didn't use other methods. Your eye wasn't perfect, and the connection wasn't stable." Hatake Kakashi himself emerged from behind the bushes. "You! Murderer!" The corpse ran toward his former comrade, but was stopped by blood-red chains entangling his arms and legs, blocking his ability to use techniques. "What is this?" "This is your final resting place, Obito. Soon, the loose ends of the chains will release a black substance that will encase you in a sphere. You will spend the last years of your life within it, and before that, I will take your right eye, just in case," Naruto said, holding his right hand in a concentration seal and raising his left hand to the despicable one's remaining eye. After ripping it out, the blonde placed the eye in a jar of solution, where he got it from is unclear. A few minutes later. "Hey, Naruto, are you alright?" The Hokage was in a deplorable state. "Brother Kushina-san, what's wrong?" Naruto came to after being knocked unconscious by the demon fox. "Brother. HM. It's been a long time since you called me that," Minato smiled. "Hey, save your strength. It's already late, Naruto. Will you keep an eye on Menma?" Naruto was struck by a sudden shock. He understood the implications of Kushina's request. Naruto realized that this was now his burden, and he had already resigned himself to it. "Yes, I'll keep an eye on him," the blonde replied with a tear on his right cheek. The married couple smiled and began to say goodbye to their child. As soon as the Kyuubi disappeared and the bodies of the fourth and his wife went limp, the blonde man approached his crying nephew and picked him up. At that moment, the third and the ANBU soldiers arrived. July 29, 2013. The city of Yakutsk. Time of creation, 9:30. Naruto sat on the couch in his living room for 3 hours, while the third stood by the window, holding a pipe in his left hand, pondering the fate of the blonde's nephew. But his thoughts ended when Naruto spoke. "Hokage-sama, how is Danzo faring before his own execution?" Namikaze asked, taking a pack of cigarettes and a lighter from his pocket. The third frowned slightly at this question and exhaled a puff of smoke, scratching his beard. "How's he doing, you ask? He's been sitting silently in his cell since his arrest, barely reacting to outside stimuli," Sarutobi began, rubbing his work-weary eyelids. "But something else surprised me. The elders haven't reacted to the accusations against Danzo or his arrest, but they haven't tried to mitigate his sentence to life imprisonment either. Still waters run deep, Hokage-sama. They're always up to something nasty. We have to be careful with them." Naruto began to express his opinion. "But I'm more concerned about other things right now." "What are these?" the Hokage asked, satisfying his curiosity. "First of all, I'm concerned about the theft of the prison sphere, or rather, whoever stole it," Naruto began to answer. "That human owl hybrid managed to cripple our ANBU, and bit off half the limbs of some of them." He lit a cigarette and took his first drag. A second later, he exhaled all the smoke. "Secondly, someone ransacked my entire office." The blonde wanted to continue, but he was interrupted. "What do you mean, dug up? Was something stolen?" Naruto's words alarmed Hiruzen. They stole a copy of the documents about the creation of this sphere. The blonde man said, though he didn't show it, but it was clear he was nervous. If they break the seal on the copy, they'll find out how to unlock it, and then the sphere can be broken. So, there's a very real risk of dire events in the future? Sarutobi tried to clarify, but when he saw the nod in response, his expression darkened. So, what else is troubling you? Menma, the blonde answered shortly. Menma? Hiruzen asked. What exactly is it about him that's so disturbing? I'm worried about his future. The blonde man began. What will happen to him if we hide the truth about him? Or if we tell him everything, but then how long will he live? I simply won't be able to forgive myself if something happens to him. I've decided. The third shook the ash from his pipe. We'll tell the villagers who Menma is, but we'll issue a decree prohibiting the dissemination of this information outside the village. But people can decide for themselves what to do, but I hope he'll be welcomed with open arms. Do you agree with that, Naruto? Yes, Hokage-sama, I agree. That's it. And find a nanny for the baby, because sometimes I'll have to tear you away from caring for him. The Hokage smiled and went into the hallway. Goodbye, Naruto. A few days later. The main square of Konoha. Go, someone said, and the people standing in front of him bowed and disappeared. On this sunny day, many people had gathered in the square. They were all awaiting the main event of the day, the execution of the traitor, Shimura Danzo. Then a convoy appeared, led by Namikaze Naruto. The residents began to part for them, creating a path for them to pass. Then, unexpectedly, rain began to fall, but even that failed to change the temperature. A minute later, the convoy approached the pedestal on which stood the third Hokage and representatives of the clans. Hokage-sama, the condemned man is ready to carry out his punishment, the blonde reported. Act. The third gave the order. The condemned man, come to the chopping block immediately, Namikaze commanded. Danzo walked slowly toward the chopping block. When he finally reached it, he was forced to his knees. Condemned, you are accused of plotting a coup and seizing power, as well as attempting to assassinate the third Hokage. The sentence is death by beheading, without the possibility of an honorable death. Executioner, carry out the sentence. Then Danzo's head was lowered to the chopping block and a huge cleaver was raised, but the executioner suddenly lurched and fell sideways. The guards immediately became alarmed and drew their swords. Naruto gave the order to disperse along the perimeter, but he, too, was overcome. At the last moment, he saw the shinobi fighting, the panicked civilians, and Danzo, who approached him and said, "This is not the end, Namikaze Naruto. My ambition will never fade, and so I will return, and then, power over the village will be mine." After this, Naruto fell into unconsciousness. A few hours later. Damn, that hurts. Don't rush, because the paralyzing poison is not completely neutralized. Hokage-sama, how are you? I'm fine, don't worry. Since you can move now, you better get home quickly. Okay. Sorry to bother you. Street. Naruto walked down the street, wondering how he'd managed to make such a mistake. How had he failed to notice the enemy? With these thoughts in his mind, he walked through the village and, without noticing, arrived at his house. He opened the door and walked inside. I'm back, Naruto said and walked into the living room, but was immediately taken aback by surprise. Hello, Naruto-kun, said a dark-haired woman of 20. Hello, Naruto-kun, said a dark-haired woman of 20. Namikaze stood in the doorway with a surprised expression, looking at the unexpected guest. She was sitting on the sofa, holding two sleeping babies in her arms, one with black hair, the other with blonde hair. She was smiling. Mikoto-san? What are you doing here at this hour? The blonde man asked, finally coming to his senses. I wanted to offer you some help. The woman began to answer. Even though you love children, you're not particularly good at taking care of them. What makes you think I can't take care of my nephew? Naruto tried to defend his point, though he hadn't actually stated it. Do you need me to remind you of that incident? Mikoto smiled slyly. What other case? Realizing that the case was hopeless, the blonde tried his best to look senile. It was like this. Uchiha began to explain. When my husband, Minato, Kushina, and I went for a walk, and you were left with 1-year-old Itachi. Do you remember that? The woman asked. Ha 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 ha. Naruto scratched the back of his head, remembering that incident. So what if I couldn't calm him down? Oh, you. He needed to go potty. Mikoto shook her head. What were you doing? I tried to feed him, give him something to drink. I even entertained him. Naruto began to justify himself. You were practically dancing around him with a tambourine. She began to laugh quietly. The blond man's expression sank at these words. He realized there was no point in arguing further. Hey, what's with you down? The woman asked, trying to shake the young man out of his current state. I just realized that there was no point in arguing further. Namikaze answered reluctantly. So you accept my help? She was already tasting victory. The blonde tried to squeeze out the right words, but he couldn't. Okay, I agree. You won't regret your decision. Mikoto smiled. I already regret losing so easily, Naruto thought. But then an idea occurred to him. Perhaps Itachi will help me? Naruto asked, seeing a ray of salvation before him. After all, you're the wife of the Uchiha clan's head, and that could backfire on you. No, he has the academy. And besides, Fugaku agreed with this decision. After all, we couldn't leave you alone in such a situation, Mikoto said. Thank you for your concern. Namikaze thanked him with tears in his eyes, thinking that his hope had faded. For years have passed. Naruto walked down the main street, holding Menma's arm. Alas, a small handful of people still looked at the boy with disdain. Uncle, Menma said, squeezing his uncle's hand tighter. Is something wrong, Menma-kun? Namikaze asked. Why do some people look at me with disdain? The boy asked. Naruto tried to keep his emotions in check, and so far he'd succeeded. He'd expected this question a little later, when Menma would be around 7 years old. But fate is a fickle and very treacherous thing. You see, some people are afraid that the beast you're holding back might break free. Or worse, if it takes advantage of your body and starts killing everyone around. Naruto explained his answer to his nephew. That's all? The boy asked. What's wrong? The blonde asked, not understanding the gist of the question. If that's all they think, then I'll subdue the fox, no matter what. Otherwise, what kind of Hokage am I? Menma yelled at the top of his lungs. Passers-by chuckled quietly, and the boy, noticing, puffed out his cheeks and began looking around with that expression. The other children, walking with their parents, began laughing heartily. Only one girl, with blonde hair, smiled sweetly in Menma's direction and blushed slightly. Wednesday, May 25th, 10:25 a.m. Namikaze's clock workshop. Menma-kun, come here, came a voice from the depths of the workshop. Coming, shouted a 4-year-old boy standing on a chair behind the store counter. He carefully climbed down from the chair, walked to the store's front door, hung a sign saying, 5-minute break, on it, and locked it. Then he turned and walked toward his uncle. Reaching his desk, he touched his uncle's hand and asked him a silent question. Oh, I'm here. Naruto smiled and ruffled his nephew's hair. Listen to me carefully. Ms. Yamanaka is supposed to come by this afternoon for her order. You need to tell her it's almost finished, offer her some tea and cookies, and wait on the sofa. Do you understand? Tell Miss Yamanaka that the order is almost complete and offer her a seat on the sofa. Then bring her some tea and cookies and offer her some to try. I understand, Menma repeated. Naruto, still smiling, ruffled his hair again and gave him a candy. Menma was delighted and walked back to the counter. On the way back, he unwrapped the candy and put it in his mouth. Sweet! His smile grew even brighter. 1423. A 26-year-old brunette was walking down the street, leading a fair-haired girl in a yukata by the hand. Mom! Where are we going? The girl asked her. We're visiting a friend of your father's. He has a workshop here. I ordered an engraved watch from him, and we're supposed to pick it up today, the woman answered. Daddy's friend? The child's gaze was filled with excitement. Isn't he scary? In response, Mom laughed quietly. No, he's not scary at all. He's a good man and loyal to his friends. She smiled. And not everyone has that quality. They walked for about 5 or 7 minutes, constantly talking about their own affairs. Finally, they reached the workshop, and the woman opened the door, ringing a bell inside. A fair-haired boy, the same age as the fair-haired girl who had come with her mother, emerged from the depths of the workshop in response to the ringing. "Hello?" the boy greeted them. "Have you come on business or to buy something?" "Hello? My name is Yamanaka Hana," the woman replied. "I've come to pick up my order." "Ms. Yamanaka?" The boy paused, remembering his uncle's morning errands. "Oh, yes, I remember. Your order isn't finished yet. Please sit on the sofa. I'll bring you some tea and cookies." Menma turned and walked deeper into the workshop. From the depths, the clanking of iron utensils and the clatter of ceramic lids could be heard. 5 minutes later, he returned with a tray in his hands. He walked over to the coffee table near the sofa and placed 2 cups and saucers, a candy dish, and a plate of cookies on it. Then he poured black tea into the cups and set the teapot on the table. "Would you like some magazines?" the boy asked the visitors, looking at them with a smile. "Do you have any magazines on Ikebana arrangement?" the woman asked. He wondered whether they had such magazines or not. "About Ikebana arrangement? I don't know. I'll take a look," the blond man replied, walking to the back of the counter. Hannah sipped her tea and wondered what to do with her daughter, who was a fidget and would often sneak out of the workshop. But the girl sat on the sofa, swinging her legs, smiling at something, and eating cookies. It was obvious she was bored. Then she looked at her mother. "Can I help him?" she asked. She smiled and nodded in response. The girl, delighted, climbed off the sofa, adjusted her yukata, and walked toward the boy. Approaching him, she leaned over and touched his shoulder. The boy froze and turned his head in her direction. "Can I help you?" the girl asked. "You can," Menma replied with a smile, pushing a stack of various magazines toward her. "Look, if you want, you can take some for yourself." "What's your name?" she asked, shuffling through her stack. "Menma, what about you?" he asked in response. "Ino. Nice to meet you." She smiled. "Me too." They searched like that for about 10 minutes, rifling through each stack of magazines and chatting among themselves. They found what they wanted. Menma carried the magazine to the customer, and Ino picked up a fashion magazine and followed. By this time, Naruto entered the store, holding a mahogany box. "Hello, Hana-san. Here's your order," Naruto said, smiling, handing her the box. The woman started to take money out of her bag, but he shook his head. She bowed her head and asked a silent question. "Inoichi-san already paid for everything yesterday," Namikaze answered. "He said he'd be paying for all your purchases himself." "He was following me?" Naruto nodded in response. "Well, I'll give him what for. Thank you for your work. Satisfying the customer's needs is the main task of a watchmaker," he said in response. "Can we go for a walk?" the children asked simultaneously. "You can, but come back when it gets dark," Hana told her daughter, and Namikaze looked at her in surprise. "The whole village knows them, so they won't get far." "Oh, all right. But still, don't go beyond the village walls and don't go into the forest beyond the mountain, okay?" Naruto said dejectedly. "Okay," the children said in chorus and ran out of the store. Naruto-kun. "What, Hana-san? Will you keep an eye on them?" she asked, smiling. Instead of answering, he smiled, walked the woman outside, closed his shop, and jumped onto a lamppost. The children wandered throughout the village, constantly smiling, eating sweets, and playing tag. But it was already getting on for the evening, and Menma decided to walk his new friend home. She led the way, and he memorized it so he could visit her later if necessary. Finally, they reached the home of the Yamanaka clan leader. Ino turned to him and smiled. "Thank you for seeing me off," she said, then came up to him, almost flushed, and kissed him on the cheek. He was speechless and rubbed the spot where she'd kissed him, smiled, waved goodbye, and went home. 3 people watched this scene, Ino's parents and Menma's uncle. Each had their own thoughts. One was wondering what would happen next, the other thought they would make a good couple, and the last simply wished his nephew luck. It was a perfectly ordinary morning. Yeah, what kind of morning can it be at 11:36? The village was already bustling with life and awash in a variety of colors. the living room of the Namikaze house. That day, two people were sitting in the living room and talking about something, but then a yellow something flew into the room and crashed into one of the interlocutors at high speed. That something was none other than Namikaze Menma. Uncle, Menma was full of enthusiasm after the walk. What do you want? Naruto answered reluctantly. Look what I found. The boy handed something to his uncle. Naruto looked at the object and was surprised. What his nephew gave him was a shard of a katana blade. Menma, where did you find this? Naruto was scared of something. On the northern border of the village, why? Menma didn't understand what was happening. When Naruto noticed his nephew's surprised look, he immediately smiled and shook his head. Go to the kitchen, there's a bowl of ramen waiting for you. The boy ran out of the living room shouting, Hooray, ramen! Mikoto-san, do you understand what this means? Yes, I'll go to my husband right now and tell him about it. Then I'll go to the Hokage and tell him about the find. But then Menma flies in again and attacks Naruto with his fists. You ate my ramen! Menma looked terribly displeased. Menma, calm down. Why did you think I ate your ramen? I didn't decide, I know it was you. Why is that? Naruto was surprised by the accusation. Only you could eat my ramen and leave a piece of paper with your face drawn on it, sticking out your tongue. Menma puffed out his cheeks. Okay. Naruto pulled his wallet out of his pocket. Here, take the money and grab a bite to eat at Ichiraku. Menma, how about I go with you? Mikoto asked. Menma, happy as a Cheshire cat, just nodded, and they left. Naruto went to the kitchen for a drink of water and remembered he hadn't had ramen today. He looked at the bowl. Next to it was a note that read, The ramen was delicious, thanks for the food and the money. What a scoundrel. Ichiraku. Menma, you can't do this. Think about your uncle. He might get offended. Mikoto-san, how many times have I done this? And every time he forgave me. But this time he may not forgive. He'll make a fuss, but he'll stop. But because he smokes, I increase the gas flow in his lighter. Let him think about the dangers of smoking. Northern border of Konoha. Naruto-san, do you have a lighter? I lost mine somewhere. Yes, there is. Naruto began to dig in his pants pocket. Here, take it. Asuma took the lighter in his hand, brought it close to the cigarette, clicked it once, and nothing happened. Clicked it twice, and still nothing. Are you out of it, Naruto-san? No, I just charged it this morning. Naruto walked up to his partner and watched him flick the lighter. Another click and still nothing, and another, but then something happened that no one would have expected. With one final click, a huge column of flame erupted from the lighter, scorching the faces of the unfortunate souls who had decided to smoke. They stood there, blinking as hard as they could. Asuma was the first to break down and fell backwards. Naruto stood his ground until the very end, slung his friend over his shoulder, and somehow made it to the hospital. And when he got there, with a cry of, Well, Menma! He fell face down. Konoha Hospital. General Medicine Department. Room 17. A blond man of about 25 years old lay on one of the ward's couches. Next to him were respirators and cardiovascular monitoring machines, and wires were attached to his body. He had been lying there like a log for a long time, but now he was showing signs of life. This was noticed by his neighbor, Asuma Sarutobi. Naruto-senpai, can you hear me? He asked his roommate. But all he heard was an inarticulate growl. What? What did you say, Naruto-senpai? The young man asked the blonde again. I said, shut up and let me sleep. Naruto muttered in response, his expression menacing. But he immediately smiled and tried to sit up on the couch. It took him 4 tries to do so. Why so rude, Naruto-senpai? Sarutobi said, feigning offense. Don't take it so seriously, Asuma. I was just joking. Naruto replied, rubbing the back of his head. Tell me this. How long have we been lying here? Almost 2 weeks, so what? The young man answered the question, forgetting the attending physician's instructions. How many? Before Asuma could answer, a doctor entered the room. Well, how's my favorite patient doing? Oh, you're awake already, the doctor said, but then he looked at the patient more closely and saw his surprised expression. Doctor, what's wrong with me? Namikaze asked the doctor. You have partial paralysis of your lower extremities. You contracted it through airborne paralysis. We found traces of this poison in your lighter. How much longer do I have to lie here? About 3 days. Now rest. I'll let your friends know about you. 4 p.m. Konoha Hospital. General Therapy Department. Room 17. It was a quiet and boring day for the patients in Ward 17. They couldn't get up or walk around their rooms. Even eating was a struggle. It was nothing but injections, IVs, and procedures. Their only distraction was sleep. But it seemed they were about to have a change of pace, as the door to their rooms slowly began to open. The patients turned toward the door and braced themselves for a fight, even though the enemy would have the upper hand. But then, 2 smiling female heads poked out from the newly formed doorway. Naruto and Asuma calmed down, for the people showing their heads were Mikoto and Kurinai. "So, how are you doing here?" they asked the patients. "Everything seems fine, thank you," Asuma replied cheerfully, smiling. Naruto, meanwhile, sat there, looking gloomy and tired, though he was looking at the guests. As soon as Mikoto looked at Namikaze, she was surprised by his condition. "Naruto-kun? Why are you so gloomy? Are you sad about something?" she asked, approaching him. Sitting down on the couch, she rubbed his forehead. "Huh? What? And it's you, Mikoto-san," Naruto said, looking at Mikoto. "I'm just wondering which of the enemies might have mixed poison into the gas in the lighter." "They wanted to kill you?" the woman asked in surprise. "No, they probably wouldn't kill me right away. The poison was paralyzing." Naruto tried to reassure the woman. "I think they wanted to immobilize me first, then do their thing, and then kill me." "Uncle?" Menma appeared from the door. Then it dawned on Naruto. After all, the last time he bought a canister of gas for a lighter was Menma. "Menma, come here, I want to ask you something." The boy approached his uncle and looked at him with puzzlement. "Who did you buy the gas cylinder from?" The boy tensed up and began to remember who he had bought that cylinder from. And 2 minutes later, it dawned on him. At the scary grandfather's. Grandfather's? Yes, grandfather's. Everyone looked at each other at the boy's statement. "Can you describe him?" Naruto asked his nephew. His right eye is bandaged. His right hand is also covered in bandages. He also has a cross-shaped scar on his chin. He began describing the old man, showing off the entire description on himself. "Don't show it on yourself, it's a bad omen," the blonde said, pulling a wanted notice from the drawer with Danzo's face on it. "Isn't that him by any chance?" Menma took a closer look and immediately nodded his head. Yes, it's him, the scary old man. And he's smiling scarily." Naruto's face twisted into a grimace of disgust, and he clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. "Mikoto-san, could you tell the third that he was here?" "Okay, I'll tell you." "Well, Menma, shall we go?" Bye." Menma waved goodbye and left with Mikoto. 2 years passed after this incident. A lot had happened in that time. Naruto grew a small beard and temporarily became the third's deputy. He began sorting through half the documents, but his true task was organizing surveillance on the elders. Itachi joined the ANBU. Menma became a petty hooligan, not from lack of attention, but to distract people from the commotion. He also entered the academy, but was a complete ignoramus in some subjects, despite Mikoto's help. Because of this, Sasuke sometimes began fighting the blonde man to get him off his mother. But even though he defeated the blonde man, his mother still supported this, in his opinion. Pain in the ass. Morning. The bathroom of the Namikaze house. Menma was brushing his teeth when this blonde, shaggy, sleepy monster entered the bathroom. The boy was so shocked he even managed to swallow the toothpaste he hadn't even had time to spit out. But when it asked, "Menma, have you brushed your teeth yet?" the boy actually ran out of the bathroom, screaming in fear. The monster didn't understand what was going on, and decided to look in the mirror. "My mother, a woman!" the monster screamed at the sight, turning on the water and immediately beginning to clean itself up. Menma watched. Then he saw the familiar toad-printed underwear, and realized the monster was none other than his uncle. By this time, Naruto had already washed his hair and shaved the excess hair from his face. "Uncle, don't scare me like that again," Menma asked him. Sorry, I won't do it again, Naruto said, simultaneously trimming his beard with scissors. Uncle, why do you need that beard? It's so prickly, the boy asked him, tugging at the edges of his uncle's t-shirt. It's just that one girl said that this beard suits me, so I don't shave it off. Fell in love? What? I asked, are you in love? You're just Captain Obvious. Naruto smiled. Yes, Menma, you're right, I'm in love. The boy started jumping up and down, shouting, Hooray! Then, all happy, he approached his uncle. And will you bring her into the house later? Sorry, Menma, but things are complicated right now. And what will everyone else think? So I don't think we should do this. But seeing the boy's sad face, he then added, But if circumstances change, I'll show you later. And now, mister, tell me, what's going on with you and that girl? Menma played dumb, saying that he didn't understand what he was talking about. Okay, go have breakfast and quickly go to the academy. Naruto ruffled his nephew's hair. 12 p.m. Hokage's residence. Deputy Hokage's office. Namikaze sat at his desk, sorting through reports and other documents, thinking about the upcoming lunch. But his thoughts were interrupted by a visitor, Uchiha Mikoto. Hello, Naruto, Mikoto said in a sad voice. Naruto narrowed his eyes, wondering about the source of her sadness. Is something wrong, Mikoto? Namikaze asked. Mikoto's expression changed, realizing there was no point in hiding her distress. It's all because of Itachi. He's changed a lot lately. She sat down on the sofa and rested her head in her hands. But that idiot Fugaku added fuel to the fire. Because of him, my son left home. She was already crying after these words. Seeing this, Naruto got up from the table and walked over to the couch. Sitting down, he hugged the woman and began to stroke her back, soothing her. Now, stop crying, it doesn't suit you. Instead, smile, Naruto said, to which Mikoto smiled meekly. Now, that's a different matter. And I'll talk to Itachi, don't worry. Thank you, Naruto, the woman smiled. I didn't know what to do. Okay, go home now, and I'll go and talk to Itachi. Mikoto thanked the guy again, turned around and left the office. Naruto didn't linger in the office for long either. Throwing on his vest and grabbing his cigarettes and lighter, he left the office. 4 hours had passed since their conversation. For the past 4 hours, Naruto had been searching for Itachi without success. The sun was already setting. Thinking he wouldn't find the boy today, Namikaze headed toward the Uchiha clan. But as he approached their compound, he smelled a strong scent of blood. He drew his wakizashi from its hidden sheath and ran toward the clan's compound. Passing through the gates, he saw no one, but blood stains were visible here and there on the street. Without further ado, Naruto ran toward the clan head's estate. Running inside, he began running through the rooms, searching for anyone alive or surviving. But so far, he hadn't found anyone. There was only one room left. Entering, he beheld this scene, Mikoto and Fugaku kneeling, and their son standing before them, swinging his katana. Without thinking, Naruto rushed to save the Uchiha. But he only managed to shield Mikoto, as Itachi had already swung his sword, killing Fugaku and wounding Namikaze. Then Itachi shook his head and looked ahead. He was horrified by what he saw. What happened? Itachi immediately rolled his father over onto his back. Running his fingers over his neck, he felt no pulse. Naruto barely got up and helped Mikoto up. You slaughtered the entire clan. Is there anything you want to tell me? Nothing. The last thing I remember is being tied to some chair and the elders scribbling something on my tongue. Then Itachi stuck out his tongue. Naruto saw a hypnosis seal on it. He pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket, placed it on his tongue, and channeled chakra into it. Itachi felt a slight burning sensation on his tongue, which immediately stopped. You were hypnotized. The elders used a special seal for that. But now it's all stopped, Naruto said. But I don't think the elders will just leave you alone. I'll talk to the Hokage later. And you need to hide for a while. I'll go to Shursui. He's hiding too. It's not far from here, in the mountains. Okay. I'll find you later. Take care of my mother and brother. I'll take care of them. Naruto glanced at Mikoto, but then looked back at the boy. Now hurry up and get out of here. Goodbye, Mom. Itachi turned around and ran out of the house. Naruto watched Itachi for a while, then fell to the floor. At this time Sasuke entered the room. Please forgive me for keeping you waiting for so long, but I had more important things to do. Oh, and I'm not very good at writing romance. The weather was fine outside. Birds sang their songs. Perched on the branches of the cherry trees near the hospital. A light breeze, accompanied by rays of the setting sun, filtered through the open window, fluttering the curtains like sails. A blond man slept peacefully in his bed. He slept soundly, dreaming unbelievably, a smile lighting his face. The room was filled with peace and quiet, but it was broken by the soft creak of the door and cautious footsteps on the tiles. The culprit was a dark-haired woman. Approaching the bed, she sat down on the chair next to it and raised her fist to strike. And just as she was about to complete her swing, something stopped her a few centimeters from the blond man's chest, forcing her to unclench her fist and bury her face in his. Streams of tears streamed from her eyes, and her body shook with small sobs. Then a hand descended on her head, gently stroking the hair on the top of her head. Taking a break from her sobs, the woman lifts her head and looks at the man who had been stroking her hair until that moment. Meeting his gaze, her face turns to anger. "You idiot! Why did you have to run away from the hospital with such a wound?" The woman screamed, her anger knowing no bounds. "Why are you making me worry about you?" "I'm sorry, Mikoto, but it had to be this way," the boy whispered, pressing her to his chest. "If I hadn't done it, Itachi would have been considered a criminal." Mikoto calmed down a little, but she didn't understand the meaning of Namikaze's words. "But it's pointless," the dark-haired girl whispered into the blonde's chest. "After all, my son, my Itachi, became a missing nin anyway." While she wasn't looking at the guy's face, he silently exhaled and rolled his eyes. "His status as a missing nin is just a sham," he said. Again, not understanding the meaning of the words, she freed herself from his embrace, looking into his eyes. "What?" Mikoto asked, not believing his words. "Oh God. I said his status is a sham. A scam," the blonde replied. "But why? Naruto, explain immediately what this all means." Mikoto was still perplexed. "Your son decided so. He said that as long as he's here, you and Sasuke won't be safe while the elders are in charge," Naruto said firmly. "And he also feels guilty. He can't accept the fact that he was so easily forced to wipe out the entire clan. That's why he asked to be counted among the missing nin. Why does he need such a brand? After all, it's a cross for life. Even though Sarutobi-sama was against it, he still agreed, but for a reason," the blonde said quietly, not taking his eyes off Mikoto's black eyes. "He was tasked with infiltrating some organization, of which Konoha's missing nin, Orochimaru, is a member." Hearing this, tears welled up in her eyes again. "Well, don't cry." Naruto hugged Mikoto, wiping the tears from her face. "It was his conscious choice. You can't blame him for it." "I don't blame him, but I won't accept it either," Mikoto said, sobbing occasionally. Naruto reluctantly released his left arm from the embrace and slowly reached for the envelope on the nightstand. Taking it, he was about to give Mikoto its contents, but then he doubled over in pain. "Ouch!" Naruto cried out. Mikoto, taken aback, suddenly pulled out of the blonde's embrace and jumped to the side. "Mikoto, calm down. Everything's fine. SSS. Namikaze tried to reassure the woman, but as soon as he extended his hand to her with the envelope, a new wave of pain gripped him. "I'll call the doctor now," Uchiha said, and was about to run out of the room when someone grabbed her arm and pulled her back. She fell on the blonde, who winced slightly, but didn't show it. "Mikoto, why are you so worried about me, like I'm 3 years old again?" Naruto asked, but the woman didn't answer, so he exhaled loudly and sat her down on the edge of the bed. "Mikoto, I've been on the brink of life and death many times, and I've escaped Shinigami-sama's clutches many times. And you're going to make a big deal out of me just because I pulled a muscle. What's wrong with you?" Instead of answering, she kissed him on the lips and quietly whispered, "I don't want to lose you again." Stunned by her actions and words, he stared at her with wide eyes. "What do you mean again?" the blonde asked, still not understanding the meaning of the woman's phrase. "I only recently realized that when I married Fugaku, you were lost to me." Mikoto continued quietly. And then, when the chance to bring you back arose, you were dying. I was scared then. I thought I wouldn't have time to bring you back, without even saying those cherished words. Naruto was even more confused about what the Uchiha was talking about. But when he saw her blush and tears welling up in her eyes again, he couldn't think of anything else but to hug her. I know you have these feelings for me too, but you don't try to tell me, you try to hide them from me, Mikoto said, clinging ever closer to the boy. And that's what's making you suffer, because if you told me earlier, you would have gotten nothing but problems. So tell me now, and get rid of this burden. Naruto didn't understand a word the woman said, but when he finally realized what feelings she was talking about, not a single thought came to his mind except to tell her of his love. Why do we need words when we can express them in other ways? Said the blonde man, kissing the woman and thinking about what a coward he was for not being able to confess. The three people standing by the door, watching the proceedings in the room, gaped in astonishment as their senpai finally found the one he'd been searching for his whole life. But then, a coughing sound, not a quiet one, was heard behind them, startling the trio. Kakashi, Obito, Rin, what are you doing here? The woman asked sternly, holding the fair-haired boy in her arms and looking with interest at the three adults, who were trembling like aspen leaves in the wind. Menmakun, go see your uncle, see how he's doing. In the meantime, I'll have a talk with these three about etiquette in public places. Okay, Grandma, Menma said, getting off the woman. Good boy, the woman said, smiling and stroking Menma's head. She didn't know why, but she was pleased to hear this boy call her, even though she was his godmother. When the boy entered the room, her smile immediately gave way to a serious expression. I await an explanation. Tsunade-sama, we just wanted to visit Naruto-senpai, but seeing he had a visitor, we decided not to disturb him, Nora replied, still shaking like a leaf. But glancing at her comrades, she saw that their faces were frozen with fear. Exhaling loudly, she poked each of them in the side and forced them to bow by the ears with her. The boys, having come to their senses, automatically apologized. Senju gave them a quick scolding and threatened, especially Kakashi, that if she caught them doing this again, they wouldn't get off with a reprimand, then entered the room. Minato's former students sighed with relief and hurried away, out of harm's way. And how is our patient doing? Tsunade asked with a smile on her face. With your efforts, I'm the best, Tsunade-sama, Naruto replied with the same smile. Only my muscles ache. And it hurts to move. It's normal, Senju said, writing something down in the hospital chart. After all, you haven't trained properly in a while, and you're still injured, so you shouldn't expect anything else from them. How much longer do I have to lie here? Asked Namikaze. Lie here for a week, and then we'll see if I discharge you or not, Tsunade replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. Well then, lift up your shirt, I'll listen to you now. Deciding not to distract the doctor, Mikoto bowed and left, taking Menma with her. The day, accompanied by sunset, was drawing to a close, and only the titmice perched on the cherry tree branches sang their songs, delighting the ears of the hospital patients. One of them was Namikaze Naruto, sitting by the window of his ward, holding a carved mahogany cane. Beside him lay a bag containing the things he had collected over the past week. Today he would return home, and with each passing second, the thought of it warmed and delighted his soul, for now not only his nephew but also his beloved, Uchiha Mikoto, awaited him there. Soon, to the trill of the birds, he dozed off, unconsciously. There was a knock on the door of the room, but when there was no answer, the visitor decided to peek inside. It was Mikoto, and seeing her lover asleep, she smiled softly. She slipped inside and quietly approached the man sleeping on the chair. Placing one hand on his shoulder and the other on his chest, she lightly kissed his cheek, immediately wrinkling her nose. The touch of her lips woke him, and he looked at her with all his tenderness. Good morning, sleepyhead. You could do with a shave. She scolded him with a smile on her lips. Sorry, I didn't have the chance, he answered, kissing her tenderly on the lips. Well, shall we go? Have you forgotten anything? Mikoto asked. No, I've already packed everything, and I'll get the report in Tsunade-sama's office, Naruto replied with a smile, rising from his chair and taking his bag in his free hand. Limping and leaning on his cane, he trudged toward the exit. Give me your bag, Mikoto suggested, walking level with him. No need, I'll do it myself. Naruto smiled. I'm not that weak yet. Somehow leaving the ward, he gritting his teeth, carried his bag, gradually quickening his pace. See, I'm bringing it, Namikaze said, but after walking a few meters, he collapsed on his knees. Horrified, Mikoto ran up to him and began examining him. After making sure he was okay, she sat him down on the bench. Idiot, what would you do if you broke your knees? Uchiha raised her voice. I'll go get Kakashi, she said, turning around and walking off in an unknown direction. Why did I even bother lugging this bag? Naruto said to himself as Mikoto disappeared around the corner. As he settled more comfortably on the bench, he noticed a pair of small, black eyes peering at him from around the corner. Shaking his head and looking back at the corner, he confirmed he wasn't hallucinating. Hey, come out, don't hide, Naruto said. The black-eyed man panicked and ran away with a yelp. Shrugging, Naruto continued looking for a comfortable position to sit on the bench when Tsunade came around the corner, accompanied by Mikoto and Kakashi. Tsunade approached him and sat down in the seat next to him. Tell me, Naruto, why did you ignore my recommendation? Senju asked, looking him in the eyes. I didn't want Mikoto to carry that heavy bag. Namikaze looked down guiltily, to which Senju merely shook her head. So that he doesn't repeat this again. Tsunade showed her fist, and then turned to the Uchiha. See to it, Senju instructed the woman, turning and heading toward her office. The Uchiha bowed after her, then helped her beloved get up from the bench, while Hatake picked up his bag. Putting an arm around Mikoto's waist, Naruto headed for the exit. A loving couple strolled leisurely through the evening streets of Konoha, arm in arm, enjoying the coolness and warmth they shared. Hatake had long since gone ahead toward the Namikaze estate, unwilling to disturb the lovers' stroll, a fact for which they were grateful. Children ran past them, either chased by their parents or hurrying home for dinner, couples like them, and those simply hurrying home after work. Passing by the entrance to the red light district, they saw a slightly drunk Jiraiya, grinning and giggling vulgarly as he hugged two courtesans. After a chuckle about who would give Jiraiya a hard time, they hurried home. Naruto, what are we going to tell the boys about us? Mikoto wanted to ask, stopping on the way, but Naruto interrupted her, putting his index finger to his lips. It's too early to tell them about this, Namikaze said, then sighed and continued. If Mema reacts to this in any way positively, Sasuke might take it with hostility. So we need to wait until he gets used to me, and then tell him about it. Mikoto, satisfied with the answer, nodded and pressed herself closer to her lover from the cold. We need to hurry home, otherwise you'll freeze to death, Naruto said, covering her back with his jacket, which appeared out of nowhere. A boy of about 6 was sitting on his bed in the nursery, reading a book, when suddenly a dark-haired boy of the same age burst into his room. Startled, the boy dropped the book and stared at the intruder. He immediately wanted to curse, recognizing the boy as his neighbor, Uchiha Sasuke, but he didn't know any nice words, so he slapped his forehead. The slap made Sasuke jerk sharply, eyeing the blonde boy warily. So, Sasuke-kun, did you run away from your girlfriends again? Menma grinned. Uchiha merely waved his hand at this grin, walked over to the bed, and plopped down next to Namikaze. I ran away from your uncle, Sasuke replied, earning a silent question from the blonde. He noticed me peeking at him from around the corner at the hospital and I ran away screaming. Uchiha blushed at what he said, for some unknown reason. You ran out of the hospital screaming like a little girl? Menma asked, suppressing all attempts at laughter. Hey, I don't squeal like a girl. The brunette blushed even more. Yeah, I can believe it. After all, it wasn't me screaming while running from a crowd of girls 2 days ago, Menma said, grinning from ear to ear. This was the last straw for the pride of the last Uchiha clan member, and he attacked Namikaze with his fists, shouting something along the way, but not a single word was understandable. At that moment, the sound of the front door slamming came from below. Hey, get off me, Databeo! Menma shouted. The man who had entered the house came running at the sound of his voice. Seeing 2 bodies entwined, shoving and cursing, he decided to separate the fighters. He first pulled one by the ear, then the other. That's how they stood, 2 of them yelping, cursing, and kicking the third, who stoically endured their kicks until one of them kicked him between the legs. In pain, the third uncle unclenched his hands and fell to his knees. The other two, feeling free, pounced on the injured man. "What's all the fuss up there?" Naruto asked, closing the front door. Mikoto listened and smiled at something. "The boys are fighting again. I'll go and break it up," Uchiha said and headed upstairs. Naruto wanted to follow her, but then there was a knock at the door. Naruto turned around, walked over to the door, and asked who the newcomer was. "Naruto-senpai, it's me, Noara Rin. May I come in?" came from the other side of the door. Naruto, deciding to let his guest in, opened the door. "Are you here on business or visiting?" the blonde asked. But instead of answering, Rin stepped aside, revealing who was standing behind her. It was Uchiha Obito. He was so angry he wanted to slam the door, which he almost did, but the Uchiha's hand stopped him from closing it. "Naruto-senpai, please listen to me!" Obito shouted. Naruto, trying his best not to punch the jerk in the face, decided to listen anyway. "Okay, just be quick," Naruto said, letting the guests inside. Obito, as soon as he entered, knelt down and lowered his head. "Naruto-senpai, I know I don't deserve to be forgiven, but I still wanted to apologize to you and your nephew," Obito said. Naruto's eyes sparkled strangely as he looked at what was happening in front of him. "I wished you had never shown up here. Your behavior brought so much grief not only to my family but to the other villagers as well. You should have been executed the moment you came here. But the information you brought to the third was what influenced his decision to put you behind bars. Naruto-senpai, even after serving my time, I still feel guilty. What can I do to get rid of it?" the Uchiha asked. "To give up my life through seppuku," Namikaze answered in all seriousness. Rin clutched her chest at what she heard and sank into a chair in the hallway, but Obito didn't seem to move. His face grew more serious with each passing second. "Okay, Naruto-senpai. I'm ready to give my life to wash away my guilt." Naruto nodded briefly, walked deeper into the house, and returned with a set of seppuku swords. He approached Obito, placed the dagger next to him, and stood next to him, drawing his katana. Obito removed his shirt, drew the dagger, and pointed the blade at his stomach. He breathed heavily for a second, then plunged the blade in and bowed his head. The last thing he remembered was the swing of the kanata and his senpai's calm face. "Sorry it took so long, but I couldn't help it. And sorry again, but this chapter will be short." Rin was shocked that her partner had committed seppuku at his senpai's behest. She couldn't believe that a kind man like her teacher's brother had so coldly ordered Obito to commit suicide. She saw only ice in his eyes, no emotion or compassion. Soon, she began to recover from her shock and looked into his eyes. "Why did you do this?" "He was punished for what he did." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she received a look of incomprehension in return. "Rin, I thought you could tell the difference between illusion and reality," Namikaze said in a surprised tone. Not understanding his words, she looked at Obito's decapitated body. A ripple appeared before her, and soon the scene before her changed. Obito was still lying on the floor, but the dagger was gone. His head was still there, and his stomach hadn't been ripped open. She immediately knelt before him and rolled him over, placing her ear to his chest. She heard his heartbeat. This brought a sense of relief to her, and she breathed a sigh of relief. "Bring him to his senses," Naruto said to her. "And tell him he's forgiven, but to stay away from Menma." After that he went towards the stairs. "Thank you, Naruto-senpai," the girl said after him, but he climbed the steps without paying attention, and only at the last one did he turn to her and bow. Naruto lay on the bed, his head in his beloved's lap, his eyes narrowed blissfully as she stroked his hair. Mikoto smiled when she heard the man's purring sound. She was pleased with her lover's choice regarding Obito. After all, Naruto could have killed him without a second thought or remorse, but he chose forgiveness. She understood he wouldn't forgive him right away, but at least he was confident of his brother's student's remorse. But she also worried about Menma. How would he react to Naruto's decision? "Naruto," Mikoto said, stopping her stroking. The blonde frowned slightly, expressing his displeasure, but he couldn't sulk for long. "Yes, darling, what's the matter?" he asked his beloved, getting out of bed and sitting down next to her. I want to talk about Menma. Mikoto began her conversation with him, slightly wary, fiddling with her fingers. We'll have to tell him about Obito, after all. I'm afraid he might do something stupid if he finds out. I understand, but it's too early to talk about it until he grows up. The blonde man began to answer the question posed to him. Let him at least turn 16, then we'll tell him, and then let him decide for himself what to do. But the brunette wanted to put in her word, but she was interrupted. This news could not only shock Menma, but also throw him off his chosen path under the pressure of emotion, Naruto said, squeezing Mikoto's hands with his own. I don't want my nephew to become a criminal in the future. Okay, then let's not talk about it anymore, Mikoto said, calming down a bit before continuing. Go to bed. You have work tomorrow, and you were so shaken up today. Naruto smiled, kissed his beloved on the lips, and began to get ready for bed. Menma, his ear pressed to the door, overheard their entire conversation. After overhearing it, the boy resolved to immediately find his parents' killer.